Welcome to We've Got a Country to Save, brought to you by my friends at InvestYRefy.com. Invest in America like I do, and by Freedom Chat. Freedom Chat has true end-to-end encryption, no storage of messages on the server, and no commercial use of user data. Speak freely and message privately. Download the app today and subscribe to my Freedom Chat channel at Larry Elder for exclusive posts and never-before-seen content. We also thank Epoch Times, Old Glory Bank, Patriot Mobile, and Birch Gold. Make sure to follow or subscribe to my channel on whatever platform you are currently using, whether X, YouTube, Facebook, or Rumble. And be sure to patronize our sponsors. And if you don't patronize our sponsors, well... we know where you live.
Are you confident that there will be a peaceful transfer of power in January 2025?
If Trump wins, no, I'm not confident at all. I mean, if Trump loses, I'm not confident at all. He means what he says. We don't take him seriously. He means it. All the stuff about if we lose, there'll be a bloodbath. It's have to be a stolen election. Look what they're trying to do now in the local election districts where people count the votes. They're elected, they're putting people in place in states that they're going to count the votes, right? You can't love your country only when you win.
And things were really peaceful after Donald Trump got elected in November 2016, right?
Our streets, 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 our streets. Impeach Trump! Impeach Trump! Impeach Trump! Impeach Trump! Impeach Trump!
And of course, things were really peaceful January 2017 during Trump's inauguration. And remember the advice that one Hillary Rodham Clinton gave Joe Biden during the 2020 campaign?
Look, it's going to be a close election. As I said in my speech, you can win 3 million more votes and still, not get elected because of the Electoral College. It all comes down to the Electoral College.
If it's a close election, like say Biden, say Biden wins, what do you think Trump will do?
Look, I think that they have a couple of scenarios that they're looking toward. One is messing up absentee balloting.
Right, of course.
They believe that helps them. So that they then get maybe a narrow advantage in the Electoral College on Election Day. Because remember, we've seen a couple of cases, like in Wisconsin, where they did everything they could to mess up voting, but because courts had ordered absentee ballots to be counted if they were postmarked on Election Day, Democrats actually won some important races there. In the recent Michigan primary, I was told in Detroit, the Republicans had 40 lawyers challenging absentee mail-in voting, and a local reporter talking to one of the lawyers he knew was told it was a dry run for November. So we've got to have a massive legal operation, and I know the Biden campaign is working on that. We have to have poll workers, and I urge people who are able to be a poll worker. We have to have our own teams of people to counter the force of intimidation that the Republicans and Trump are going to put outside polling places. This is a big organizational challenge, but at least we know more about what they're going to do. And, you know, Joe Biden should not concede under any circumstances, because I think this is going to drag out, and eventually I do believe he will win if we don't give an inch and if we are as focused and relentless as the other side is.
Sigh. Here again is what Trump really said about bloodbath.
Mexico has taken, over a period of 30 years, 34% of the automobile manufacturing business in our country. Think of it, went to Mexico. China now is building a couple of massive plants where they're going to build the cars in Mexico and they think that they're going to sell those cars into the United States with no tax at the border. Let me tell you something to China. If you're listening, President Xi, and you and I are friends, but he understands the way I deal, those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. No, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars. They're building massive factories.
And here is what he really said about being a dictator on day one.
Do you in any way have any plans whatsoever, if reelected president, to abuse power, to break the law, to use the government to go after people?
You mean like they're using right now?
You would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one.
Except
Look,
what?
he's going crazy. Except for day one.
Meaning?
I want to close the border, and I want to drill.
That's not retribution. I'm going to be, you know, he keeps, we love this guy. He says, you're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one. We're closing the border, and we're drilling. After that, I'm not a dictator.
Now, about bloodbath, he was referring to what would happen to the economy in general and to the auto industry in particular if he isn't elected. Regarding dictator, as you heard, he said he will be a dictator day one to secure the border and to resume drilling. He, of course, did not mean dictator literally. And if using an executive order on borders and drilling makes you a dictator, that means Biden was a dictator too. Recall on his very first day, he reversed the Trump border policies and reversed the Trump oil and gas policies. So therefore, Biden was a dictator, right?
Logical.
Hi, folks. Do you trust this economy? What if you could receive a strong fixed rate of return that's not correlated to the stock market or the Fed? And what if you were in control? You could turn your income on or off, compound it, whatever you choose. What if your interest was compounded daily, you were paid monthly, and there were absolutely no fees? And what if you could have peace of mind because there was no attack on your principal if you ever needed your money back? Well, folks, there is an investment with all of these features. Investors all over the country are earning a high fixed rate of return with Yrefy, and they don't care about what happens with the stock market or the Fed. And best of all, they receive their statement every month with no surprises. Would you like some more information? Just call 877-80-INVEST. That's 877-80-INVEST. Or log on to investyrefy.com. That's investyrefy.com. Yrefy, do well by doing good. Now, Democrat Representative Jamie Raskin says since Donald Trump, even if he wins, Congress should stop him from taking office.
What can be put into the Constitution can slip away from you very quickly. And the greatest example going on right now before our very eyes is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which they're just disappearing with a magic wand, as if it doesn't exist, even though it could not be clearer what it's stating. And so, They want to kick it to Congress, so it's going to be up to us on January 6, 2025 to tell the rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified. And then we need bodyguards for everybody in Civil War conditions, all because the 9 justices, not all of them, but these justices who have not many cases to look at every year, not that much work to do, a huge staff, great protection, simply do not want to do their job and interpret what the great 14th Amendment means. And I'm glad that Sherilyn's creating her new center so we can bring that.
So much for democracy being on the ballot. Now, this should scare everybody about Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris says the goal is not equality, it is equity. We all should end up in the same place.
It has to be about a goal of saying everybody should end up in the same place. And since we didn't start in the same place, some folks might need more. Equitable distribution. Giving resources based on equity, understanding that we fight for equality, but we also need to fight for equity, understanding not everyone starts out at the same place. So there's a big difference between equality and equity. Equality suggests often everybody should get the same thing. Well, that often assumes everybody started out in the same place, as opposed to equity, which is everyone should end up in the same place. And if you then understand not everybody started out in the same place, you understand some people need more. So we all end up in the same place, right? We are proud of the fact that equity is one of our guiding principles. Proud of the fact that we understand equality is important, but not everybody starts out on the same base. We see that people in our country are having an experience that is not equal. So when we talk about the work we are doing here together, it is recognizing that and being guided by this principle of what we must do in the spirit and in the interest of equity. To put equity firmly at the center of our economic policy. But no, if you look at the reality of who will benefit from certain policies, when you take into account that they're not starting at the same place and they're not starting on equal footing, it will directly benefit Black children, Black families, Black homeowners.
What? Here's what John F. Kennedy had to say about equity and equality.
There's always an equity in life. Some men are killed in a war, and some men are wounded, and some men never leave the country, and some men are stationed in the Antarctic, and some are stationed in San Francisco. It's very hard in military or in personal life to assure complete equality. Life is unfair.
Equal rights and equal outcome are two very different things. In fact, this is the very definition of communism. From each according to his abilities to each according to his needs. Tom Sowell called equity the thief of human potential.
I guess the first thing to do is to define what cosmic justice is as distinguished from whatever other kind of justice we may be familiar with. Traditional justice, I guess we can summarize, at least in the American tradition, as applying the same rules and the same standards to everybody. Cosmic justice is very different. It means equalizing the prospects of everybody. And those two things are not only different in concept, they are wholly incompatible with one another. If you apply the same rules and standards to everybody in baseball, Mark McGwire is going to hit 70 home runs, and there are going to be other people who will spend an entire career without hitting 70 home runs, including people in the Hall of Fame like Luke Appling, who twice won the batting championship. So if you want the one thing or the other, you can go for it. But the one thing you cannot do is pursue the two things simultaneously. Or rather, you cannot successfully do that.
Essentially, what Governor Tim Walz was saying and justifying the rioters and the protesters is they lacked equity.
Are we going to be safe? Are we going to be okay? Are businesses going to go down? Your thoughts?
Well, it's my responsibility. I would tell Minnesotans that we are doing everything in our power to do that. And I want to hold those two truths at the same time. The folks you see out there at Brooklyn Center are in trauma, and they're rightfully angry at a system that does not serve them and puts Black youth and people of color at risk. That is all absolutely true. We also know from experience in May there will be those that will exploit that.
You see, if you don't have the same thing your neighbor has, don't work hard to get it. Burn down what your neighbor has. Speaking of Tim Walz, who is this guy? Kamala Harris's running mate. Well, according to the anti-Trump pro-Dem media, he's just your basic moderate.
The idea that Tim Walz is some lefty is just not true in reality. He got elected in a district that was very moderate.
Walz, of course, was very moderate in Congress,
establishing himself as a moderate Democrat.
He had a pretty moderate record, rather moderate Democrat, viewed as a moderate Democrat.
He is a centrist. To say that he's more liberal than Vice President Harris or the most liberal congressman, which I'm sure we're going to hear, just not true.
In Congress, he was certainly a centrist, but a more centrist deal-making candidate.
Kind of a centrist Midwesterner in persona.
A more centrist type who can appeal to suburban voters.
We have heard from Democrats who know him who describe him as folksy, as somebody who can reach out to independents.
He will be able to pull over some of those more moderate voters.
He has a history of appealing to the more rural, moderate voter out there.
Moderates, even moderate Republicans.
Absolutely more moderate than people are giving him credit for right now. I would like someone to point out a place that he is different on an issue than Josh Shapiro.
Does this look like a moderate? If you weren't following the news, a massive hit to the U.S. dollar came in June when Saudi Arabia did not renew its 50-year petrodollar deal with the U.S. You see, since 1974, Saudi Arabia has sold oil solely in U.S. dollars, and that was huge to our global economic dominance. Now they want options other than the U.S. dollar. So I ask you, if there is less demand for the dollar, what happens to the dollar? Look, it's reasons like this that Americans turn to Birch Gold Group. For over 20 years, Birch Gold has helped tens of thousands of Americans protect their savings by converting an IRA or 401k into an IRA into physical gold. To learn more, visit LarryForGold.com and claim your free, no-obligation info kit on gold. Again, visit LarryForGold.com. Birch Gold has earned my trust with their education-first approach, their thousands of happy customers, and their countless 5-star reviews. Protect your savings with gold before the dollar plunges any further. Visit LarryForGold.com today. That's LarryForGold.com today. Now, Tim Walz never served in combat, but he certainly implied he did.
Hope woke up like many of you did 5 weeks ago and Dad said, Dad, you're the only person I know who's in elected office. You need to stop what's happening with this. I'll take my kick in the butt for the NRA. I spent 25 years in the Army and I hunt. And I gave the money back, and I'll tell you what I have been doing. I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
And Representative Mike Waltz has a few questions.
Hey, a lot of discussion out there in the veterans community about Governor Tim Walz's military record, and I think it boils down to two issues. One is the fact that he's described himself over his political career as a sergeant major, as the highest enlisted rank in the Army. He was promoted to sergeant major, but then in order to stay in that rank, you have to complete certain training. You have to complete the Sergeant Major's Academy, which he never did. So he was subsequently demoted to Master Sergeant before he retired. A lot of questions there on how he should be describing himself. And I think those are fair to ask, and he should answer them. And then the bigger issue is walking away from his soldiers after they had been called to go to Iraq. I commanded Green Berets. Everything that you do prepares you for that moment when you have to lead your men and women into harm's way. It's kind of like the quarterback of a big team walking away from their team right before they go to the Super Bowl. I've never heard anything like it, especially the fact that he was a command sergeant major. I've never heard of a commander or a sergeant major stepping away from their unit before they go down range. The media needs to do their job and ask these tough questions, and Walz needs to answer them. The veterans community, for one, is demanding an explanation of why he didn't fulfill his duty as a command sergeant major and go into harm's way with the men and women he was leading.
Even NBC said no one really disputes that Walz abandoned his National Guard battalion before they deployed to Iraq.
Vance is pointing out two things. Number one, that Walz basically left his unit, which no one really disputes, in 2005 before that unit was set to be deployed to Iraq. Walz was planning to run for Congress. The Harris campaign points out all the nice things he did for veterans and on the VA committee once he was in Congress. But the fact that he did not go serve in Iraq, which J.D. Vance himself did, albeit as a public affairs officer in the U.S. Marines, is a point that they are trying to make. And also, they're seizing on a comment that Walz has used in the past to suggest that certain weapons should not be in the hands of regular people. Weapons like what he carried in war is the quote from Walz. Vance seizing on that and saying, you were never in war, Tim Walz, so what are you talking about there? And the Harris campaign has responded to that too as well, pointing out that Walz both carried, trained, and is deeply familiar with the types of weapons we're talking about here, regardless of having never used them in combat.
Tim Walz is constitutionally illiterate. He actually thinks there is no right to disinformation or to hate speech.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
Hate speech is offensive. It is mean. It is nasty. It is vicious. But it is protected by the First Amendment. And what does Walz mean by, quote, especially around our democracy? Hate speech is free speech.
Our Constitution has more extensive protections for free speech than any other liberal democracy. And it protects hate speech. It does not protect speech that can be understood as an immediate incitement to violence. But it does protect hate speech, and I myself believe, although I understand that other people believe differently, that protecting people's rights to say abhorrent things is an important part of the protection of our right of free speech. But I understand that our students today, they grew up with instruction against bullying in the public schools. They understand what harassment is. They don't understand why it's not okay for them to say something in a classroom or in a dormitory that someone like Milo can come to campus and say in Zellerbach Auditorium.
I want to push you a little harder, though, on this, because the question is how does protecting Milo Yiannopoulos' right to engage in what I personally actually do think is fairly hateful speech, how does that protect my rights to free speech?
Well, the question is, who's the censor? So if you determine that someone has the right of determining what is hate speech and what is not hate speech, I believe you give a dangerous kind of authority to the government. And so someone that is going to censor Milo's right to engage in what we call hate speech today might call hate speech tomorrow something that is, for example, critical of Roy Moore, or critical of the kind of bigotry that you see in some of our far right groups today.
So the danger is that one person's hate speech might be another person's valid criticism of somebody else. And since it's very hard to make the distinction, therefore we have to say, even when we think that it looks like hate speech to us, we need to allow it to make sure we protect the right of the person who would have a valid criticism that others might think is hate speech.
That's exactly right.
And you can express your hatred of the government.
Why you believe that people who burn the flag in America should be allowed to do so, and yet you personally, if you had the chance, would sling them all in jail?
Yeah, if I were king, I would not allow people to go about burning the American flag. However, we have a First Amendment which says that the right of free speech shall not be abridged, and it is addressed in particular to speech critical of the government. I mean, that was the main kind of speech that tyrants would seek to suppress. Burning the flag is a form of expression. Speech doesn't just mean written words or oral words. It could be semaphore. Burning a flag is a symbol that expresses an idea. I hate the government is unjust, whatever.
And there is a big difference between hate speech, which is offensive, and violence.
Your job, obviously, here at the legislature is to ensure that our freedom of expression is maintained, that our First Amendment rights are maintained. And what that means, first and foremost, in my experiences on college campuses, is that the heckler's veto must be stopped. So I was at Cal State Los Angeles in February 2016, and there was almost a riot there, and the police were not allowed to do their jobs, and students were physically assaulted in the crowd. It is the job of this legislature to ensure that police can do their jobs. And when they do their jobs, when they're allowed to do that at places like UC Berkeley, everything goes fine. And I'd like to make a point here about UC Berkeley. The reason it cost $600,000 to bring me to UC Berkeley was not because of me. Okay, everybody keeps suggesting that it was because I was coming. I'm so controversial and so terrible. I came exactly 1 year before, and it cost this many dollars. It cost $0 for security at UC Berkeley. The reason it cost $600,000 at UC Berkeley is because Antifa and violent groups had decided that Berkeley was their domain, and they were going to be able to run roughshod over law enforcement there. And this does bring up one final point that I want to make in the long period of time that I have to discuss, and that is the problem with a legislative body such as yours trying to draw lines specifically about what hate speech constitutes. Because the fact is that one of the reasons groups like Antifa show up is not because they know who I am, it's because they have been told by people that I am promulgating hate speech, which is utterly false and utterly untrue. There are people who say vile things and with whom I disagree. Among them, people like Milo Yiannopoulos, who sent me a picture of a black baby on the day of my child's birth because I wasn't sufficiently standing up for the white population, supposedly. But that does not mean that the legislature gets to decide what hate speech is. I've been labeled a promulgator of hate speech when I was the #1 target of hate speech according to the ADL among the journalistic community in 2016. So let me suggest that as a legislature, your chief job is to ensure that my taxpayer dollars in this state go toward making sure that people like me and people with whom I disagree get to speak in places like college campuses, and not toward regulating what speech you find good and what speech you find bad, because it's a really dangerous business, and there's speech I don't like, there's speech you don't like, but if we can't agree that there is a difference between speech and violence, we're not going to be able to have a free state, let alone a free country. Thanks.
Let me ask you a question. How many of you are concerned about the invasion of privacy that is currently going on by the Biden administration? Biden's DOJ is invading individuals' private messages and targeting them based on their political affiliation, and that's why I partnered with Freedom Chat, a private social messaging app that, like me, believes privacy is your fundamental human right. Freedom Chat has variable end-to-end encryption, built-in screenshot protection, no storage of messages on their servers, and no commercial use of user data. I'm such a fan of Freedom Chat, in fact, that I have created my own private channel that you can subscribe to for exclusive content, including never-seen images, videos, and posts. Simply download the app, or if you're on Android, join their waitlist. Search for my channel and subscribe. No one can see the channels that you are subscribed to or the posts that you react to. It's your own perfectly curated private news feed. Speak freely and message privately with Freedom Chat. Download the app today and subscribe to my channel at Larry Elder for exclusive posts and never-before-seen content. You see, Walz wants to take us to where the UK is right now. This is a man named Stephen Parkinson. He's the Director of Public Prosecution, the equivalent of the U.S. Attorney General. He says he wants people prosecuted for reposting things on social media that are deemed offensive.
The offence of incitement to racial hatred involves publishing or distributing material which is insulting or abusive, which is intended to or likely to start racial hatred. So if you retweet that, then you're republishing that, and then potentially you're committing that offence. And we do have dedicated police officers who are scouring social media. Their job is to look for this material and then follow up with identification arrests and so forth. So it's a really, really serious. People might think they're not doing anything harmful. They are, and the consequences will be visited upon them.
Are you kidding me? People should be prosecuted for retweeting things that are deemed offensive? And here was Walz's take at the start of the George Floyd Black Lives Matter protests and riots in Minneapolis. George Floyd good, cops bad, protesters justified.
A society that does not put equity and inclusion at the center of it is certainly going to eventually come to the places where we're at. This is a moment of inflection. It's a moment of real change. It's a moment that those folks who are out there demanding this are not going to take a commission or a report. They're going to want fundamental change. And that is what I think, that's one of the exciting things in the midst of all this. You can feel a sense of optimism coming back.
Should Minnesota be a sanctuary state?
If the definition of that is that the federal government enforces immigration law and local law enforcement enforces local law, then yes.
Should cities be allowed to be sanctuary cities?
Yes, local control.
I'm just furiously checking Twitter, trying to find out, has the National Guard said anything? Has Mayor Fry said anything? Has a governor said anything? The last tweet we have from the National Guard says, as citizens in Minneapolis and St. Paul observe a temporary curfew, the National Guard will be out helping to restore order and provide safety in the community. Rest assured, we are standing watch. That was 4 hours ago.
Well, standing watch isn't good enough when you've got a crowd like this, when you consider what we've seen over the last 3 nights, that to let a situation, and hopefully it won't get any more out of hand than what we've seen so far. But this is not what the governor said earlier today. He said we would not see a repeat, and we see this curfew obviously did not hold. There's so many people that...
And somewhere, Bernie Sanders is smiling.
But we can get out there, reach out, make the case. And for one thing, don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness.
And don't get me started on the way he handled COVID. Okay, you got me started.
We all need to be very honest about this. This took a very deliberate turn into political ideology. The mask became a symbol of politics. I will forever, as long as I live, wish that had never happened.
That the virus itself wasn't something to take drastic measures to fend off, or even simple measures to mitigate, like putting on a mask.
There's people are saying, you're just trying to have us wear the mask or whatever. I said, I am. I want you to wear the mask so that you live, and that's the day I said, so that you can live till the next election and vote against me, because that is not my priority. My priority is stopping the spread of this.
Speaking along those lines then, I'm sure you hear it a lot, you'll be a one-term governor because of this.
That very well could be. And if that's the choice of Minnesotans, as I've always said, I respect their right to do that. I have to do the things that need to be done, not the easy things.
The criticism of Governor Walz has come alongside his decisions to limit who is open or closed.
Those restaurants are hurting. And as I've said time and time again, this isn't fair. This is a virus that spreads when people are indoors,
close contact without a mask next to people who aren't their immediate family. That is the definition of a bar or restaurant.
As of tonight, bars and restaurants are still closed to indoor patrons. And as of tonight, the numbers of positive tests and hospitalizations in Minnesota are coming down.
It is dropping off again today, and knock on wood, for the first time we're under 2,000 cases.
So with those numbers starting to go down, do you have any regrets for keeping the restrictions on bars and restaurants the way they are right now?
No, not where the science is at and not where the healthcare systems is at. What we thought is getting a view on what potential holiday surge, potential usage, bed usage where we were at. Get past the new year, we'll take a look again.
Will you open us back up in January?
Well, we'll let the numbers see where we're at.
I give you Governor Tim Walz.
Well, I think, just to be clear, over 80% of our students miss less than 10 days of in-class learning.
I won't forget when you illegally banned physicians from prescribing medications for early treatment, fracturing the doctor-patient relationship.
I will never forget being forced out of my job at the VA of 20 years because of the vaccine mandate.
I won't forget when you decided which businesses were essential and which ones weren't.
You shut down stores, malls, zoos, everything, and we couldn't even go outside.
I'll remember when you sent COVID-positive patients back to the nursing homes, and you chose not to send them to the Bethesda COVID hospital. People died alone.
I won't forget to vote in November.
I will never forget how you closed our churches but left the liquor stores open.
I will remember how you promised us data on masks, and you never showed the data.
My child can't wear a mask, and I had to pull him from school.
And I remember how you divided us.
People rioted, burnt our cities, and we were not allowed to gather with our families.
I will remember in November.
We won't forget in November.
I will never forget how you abandoned the most vulnerable Minnesotans by shutting down day programs for disabled adults.
I remember when you blamed Minnesotans when your mitigation strategies failed.
I will remember in November.
You put a limit on people who could come over to your house for Thanksgiving. I will never wear a mask again.
I will never forget what you did to me and my friends. I will never wear a mask again.
Governor Walz, we are not your one Minnesota. We are real Minnesotans who are worried about our future, and we will remember in November.
And this is from the New York Times. How defund the police failed. June 2023. As city leaders debated the fate of the police department, they ultimately, by the way, decided not to defund the police. But officers left the department, many walking away with medical disability payments after seeking treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder. As of early June 2023, the Minneapolis PD had 585 officers, down from 912 in 2019. Violent crime soared. Gang violence, once a minor problem in Minneapolis, became such a challenge that the feds charged 45 people suspected of being gang members in a pair of racketeering indictments in May of 2023, the first in the city. Many residents have given up on the local transportation system, where some stations increasingly have become gathering points, says the New York Times, for people who openly smoke fentanyl and other drugs. Car thefts and carjackings skyrocketed. As of early June 2023, more than 4,100 vehicles have been stolen in the city this year, twice as many as during the same period last year, end of quote. And this was on TikTok.
Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump, just the facts. You can fact check me, it's all true. Kamala, she graduated from Hastings College of Law. The law school is ranked 82nd out of 196 law schools. She graduated, she took her bar exam, she failed. She failed the exam. She has never had her own business, never had any of her own employees, ever. 2017 to 2021, she served in the California Senate. During those 4 years, she worked on 164 pieces of legislation. Not one of them ever became law. What makes it worse is that she's a liberal governing in a liberal state, and she was still 0 for 164. So during the 4 years, she accomplished nothing. As vice president, she has a record, the lowest approval rating ever in the history of this country, 28%. Donald J. Trump, he graduated from Penn's Wharton School of Business. It's ranked #1 out of 124 business schools in the country. He has run many businesses over 53 years, employed hundreds of thousands of employees over that time. Currently, he has 22,450 employees split between men and women. That equates to hundreds of millions of dollars over time that have flowed into the economy. Personally, I don't just vote blindly along party lines. I just vote common sense. Let me keep it simple. If your parents had a company and you inherited this company and you didn't want to or couldn't run it yourself, who would you pick to run it? Kamala or Trump? Someone that has never run anything or someone that has run companies worth billions? Now let me extrapolate for a second. Forget about this company I was saying your parents own. What I'm really talking about is a company called the United States of America. Again, please, common sense.
Americans have had enough of supporting companies that hate our values. Tired of compromise? So am I. It's time to switch to Patriot Mobile, America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. They are an example of putting the cause ahead of profits, and that's why I'm proud to partner with them. Patriot Mobile offers dependable nationwide coverage, giving you access to all 3 major networks, which means you get the same coverage you've been accustomed to without funding the left. When you switch over to Patriot Mobile, you're sending a message that you support the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the sanctity of life, and our military vets and our first responder heroes. Their 100% U.S.-based customer service team makes it easy to switch, keep your number, keep your phone, or upgrade. Their team will help you find the best plan for your needs. Just go to patriotmobile.com/Larry or call 972-PATRIOT. That's patriotmobile.com/Larry or call 972-PATRIOT. Get free activation when you use the offer code Larry. Join me and make that switch today. patriotmobile.com/Larry, patriotmobile.com/Larry or call 972-PATRIOT. Let's call this a Trump derangement trilogy. First, I'm old enough to remember when fat shaming was condemned by the left.
First, I've got to give a shout out to my friend Charlie Sykes. I spit coffee over the weekend when I saw how he referred to Trump, that Trump is in the fat Elvis stage of his career.
I feel like that's mean to Elvis.
I know, but I love that. I love that. And so I didn't want to go any further in this program without giving love to my fellow pundit Charlie Sykes for the fat Elvis. And by the way, fat Elvis is worried, and so is the weirdo he picked as his running mate. Because, this field is pretty damn good. She really isn't going to get in trouble with any of these selections. Now, having said that, I think Yamisha's right. She's going to want somebody that she can feel a personal connection to, that she feels comfortable with. And we have no way of knowing who that is because we're not in the room when they visit and talk and when she asks questions and he asks her questions. So, I love Tim Walz because he's so plain spoken and relatable.
Actually, Trump looks like he's lost weight. He looks pretty good.
Plus, in certain cases, I see many of you in the room where I'm speaking to you on phones, I'm speaking to radio, I'm speaking to television. Television's coming over here. Excuse me, what are we doing right now? She's not doing any news conference. You know why she's not doing it? Because she can't do a news conference. She doesn't know how to do a news conference. She's not smart enough to do a news conference. And I'm sorry, we need smart people to lead this country because our country's never been in this danger before, both economically and from an outside perspective. Russia doesn't respect us anymore. China doesn't respect us anymore. North Korea, Kim Jong-un, liked me a lot. He doesn't like this group. We are in great danger. We're in great danger of being in World War III. That could happen.
Second, I'm old enough to remember when Trump...
She even put me in the movies. She put me in the movies, right? A long time ago. And how much did I charge? Nothing.
Like they say in the
It was a freebie. Tommy, I love you. I'm telling you.
And they're trying to humanize them and change your idea about who this guy is. Don't fall for that.
Trump. You're talking about.
Yeah.
Talking about Trump.
Excuse me, where's the lobby?
Down the hall and to the left.
Thanks.
Third, the Chicago mayor referring to Trump's appearance at the National Association of Black Journalists. The mayor said he ran into blackness and felt it, and he extolled the masterpiece of the black woman.
But he ran into blackness, and he felt it. He felt the heat, the unconditional love, the masterpiece of the black woman that only an amazing God can take an Indian and a Jamaican and create somebody in his image, a black woman.
The masterpiece of the black woman? All of them?
If you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome.
All of them? Including Cori Bush, when she lost her primary due to the millions of dollars spent by the Jewish lobby AIPAC in order to get her Democrat opponent elected? Same thing, by the way, happened to another anti-Israel and anti-Semitic hard lefty, Jamal Bowman. The masterpiece of the black woman.
Pulling me away from my position as Congresswoman. All you did was take some of the strings off. Because see, now I don't have to worry about some strings that I have attached, and as much as I love my job. But all they did was radicalize me, and so now they be afraid. AIPAC, I'm coming to tear your kingdom down.
Oh, this is reassuring. They must have heard that Cori Bush lost her election. Okay, Mr. Mayor, how about the magnificence of this black woman?
Common Sense 101. I got your big reason why you better not vote for Kamala Harris. This X post made me so mad I almost threw the damn phone across the room. I need a goody powder because I have a headache. Why is it this illegal alien, this so-called migrant from Venezuela, left a receipt at the cash register in one of the New York City bodegas? Hold up. I'm going to tell you. Why is it that this heifer, who has never put anything into this country, never worked in this country, never paid Social Security tax, never paid a property tax, never put into the IRS, never paid anything into anything, came here with her damn hand stuck out, came from country, wherever the hell you from, this individual left the receipt where she had just bought some food at the bodega. Okay? Her food stamp balance, let me make sure I'm getting this right, on her EBT card, her taxpayer funded EBT card, her food stamp balance is $13,401.82 for 1 month. That's this individual's food stamp balance for 1 month. Okay? Because when you use your EBT card, it leaves a record of the balance after you've gone to the store and spent it, whatever. But somehow this who has literally never, and yeah, I said it, I'm going to say it again. This who has never paid anything into the system is somehow worthy to get $13,401.82. Cash balance is $4,498.85. I really do need a goody powder. That's just one. That's one of them. That's one of them. New York has hundreds of thousands of these foreign nationals roaming around. Why does she have $13,000 in food stamps? I'm mystified. I mean, Veterans are literally sleeping on the freaking streets with maybe $100, $200 a month in food stamps. And they fought in wars to protect this country. They don't get $13,000 a month in food stamps. And they don't get $4,498 a month in cash. I'm looking at it. I can't even believe this is real. This is actually real. Senior citizens have to go back to work after working for 70 years. In their 80s, they have to work to greet at Walmart or Costco because they can't stop working. They don't have enough money with this so-called Inflation Reduction Act and the extremely high inflation thanks to Biden-Harris. And you're going to vote for this to continue? Oh my God, don't talk to me. If you even, I mean, the identity politics aside, Kamala Harris has an open checkbook. She has an endless credit card on your tax dime. And she does not buy cheap things. She can buy whatever she wants. She can drive whatever she wants. She can live wherever she wants because she has the money, thanks to you and your tax donations. And of course, the big donors, foreign and domestic, probably mostly foreign, but whatever, $13,000. This Venezuelan migrant gets $13,000 a month in food stamps. Another $4,400. That's just a balance. That means it started higher than that. So this individual had even more than that, than what I just mentioned. In what world is this allowed? I am seeing videos in Venezuela where she just came here from, where there are hundreds of thousands of people taking to the streets because of the rigged you-know-what that just took place, where Nicolas Maduro does not want to leave power. So he's just like the Katie Hobbs of Venezuela, is just sitting there like, nope, I ain't leaving. Even though exit polls show that the other candidate won clearly based on what the people want. You can make a machine say anything you want when you program it. But what do the people want? Do you really want this? Do you really want 4 more years of this? Because it will get worse. They're going to be buying these people homes, like flat out, and just giving it to them. BlackRock, Vanguard, they'll just continue to buy up homes and rent them out. And Harris will just give government subsidies to these migrants so that they can have homes while you figure out where you're going to live because they have priced you out. But these migrants have government subsidies for the rest of their pathetic existence on your tax dollars. Oh my God. $13,000 a month in food stamps. Another $5,000 or so a month in cash to a Venezuelan migrant who just got here. And you want to vote for Harris?
Damn! Do you ever wake up and realize your life has no purpose?
Do I have a death wish? Morgan asked. Maybe I did. I thought this would be our final run ever. We had made millions and millions of dollars, but God had other plans.
Peter Lowe, the one-time drug dealer turned pastor, along with 2 others, will be executed at 12 midnight local time.
You can be in heaven, or you can be in hell. The choice is yours. I found Christ in here, and he forgave me.
My name is Peter Lowe, and I will be executed in 2 hours.
Jesus is for free, and salvation is a gift. Do you believe in Jesus?
Now, Nancy Pelosi thinks Biden should be on Mount Rushmore.
So he was in a good place to make whatever decision, the top of his game. Such a consequential president of the United States, a Mount Rushmore kind of president of the United States. Want to know what comes next?
That he belongs up there on Mount Rushmore. Lincoln and Joe Biden.
But you got Teddy Roosevelt up there, and he's wonderful. I don't say take him down, but you can add Biden.
But did he step aside?
1, 2, 3.
Biden should be on Mount Rushmore because, after all,
Secure the economy and the environment and a few other small things.
So let me ask Dr. Bernstein a question. Doc, why did you think inflation was temporary?
The word, of course, transitory is what you're referring to, and I not only believe, but I've said, and this is...
Well, is temporary and transitory, those are synonymous, right?
Yeah, those are they're synonyms. And
okay,
I think
well, tell me why...
But I think transitory was...
Tell me why you thought inflation... I'm going to be accurate. Why in your infinite wisdom you thought inflation was transitory or temporary?
Well, let me be clear about what we meant at the time. And by the way, and this is contrary to what Ranking Member Scott said earlier, I did not ever say that people didn't understand transitory. What I said was we didn't understand transitory. In fact...
Well, that's clear. We can stipulate to that.
That word that word is temporally ambiguous. It meant different things. To some people it meant 2 weeks, to some people it meant 2 years. What we meant, and let me answer your question, we thought inflation was going to accelerate and gradually cool down over time. Now, that has turned out to be in fact, the pattern that inflation has taken. But transitory was much too ambiguous a description of that dynamic. Acceleration, cooling.
So let me
now,
stop
inflation
you,
is down from 9%
to
5%.
Are you telling me that when you said inflation was transitory, you were correct?
No, I'm not saying I was correct or incorrect. What I'm saying was that was an ambiguous...
Like you're saying you were correct.
No, I'm saying that was an ambiguous and unclear word that was poorly chosen, I think, for that discussion because it meant different things to different people. To me...
Well, has it been transitory?
Inflation has, in fact, behaved much as I just described. We thought inflation was going to accelerate and gradually cool over time, and that is
Jared's going to cut me off. Has it been transitory?
Inflation has accelerated and cooled.
Senator's time's expired. I want to fulfill what you said, that I was going to cut you off.
That bread costs more, that gas costs more. And we have to understand what that means. That's about the cost of living going up. That's about having to stress and stretch limited resources. That's about a source of stress for families that is not only economic, but is on a daily level, something that is a heavy weight to carry.
Now, we may have inflation, but good news, it's woke inflation.
You know, we have to stay woke. Like, everybody needs to be woke. And you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke. Yeah.
Trump called Harris a radical trans activist and that she's a candidate of letting men beat up women in the name of tolerance.
Harris is a radical trans activist, and she is the candidate of letting men beat up women in the name of tolerance. But you look at what's happening over in Paris, it will never happen here. I will never let it happen. I will get all males off your daughter's soccer teams and volleyball teams and get them out of your locker rooms once and for all. That's going to be cleaned up, and we will fight to make sure that the LA Olympics protects women and protects girls.
Algerian boxer Iman Khalif, who previously faced issues with testosterone and gender eligibility tests, won her opening match at the Olympics. Her opponent, Angela Carini, quit after 46 seconds following 2 strong punches. Angela Carini up her hands, broke down in tears, and abandoned the match, calling the situation unfair. Carini refused to shake Khalif's hand and fell to her knees crying. Carini mentioned that she had never experienced punches like those before and chose to prioritize her health, stating, "I didn't lose tonight, I just surrendered with maturity." Despite a previous disqualification, Khalif is one of 2 boxers allowed to compete at the Olympics this year.
On a happier note, congratulations are in order. The rapper Zuby just set a major women's sports record, and he did it without even training and without even being a woman. A couple weeks ago, Zuby tweeted this, quote, "I keep hearing about how biological men don't have any physical strength advantage over women in 2019, so watch me destroy the British women's deadlift record without even trying." And then you know what he did? He did just that. Now, why is that a record? Well, Zuby explained, quote, "P.S. I identified as a woman while lifting the weight. Don't be a bigot!" Well, under prevailing wisdom right now, in fact, under mandatory belief systems that you must adopt or be punished, he's absolutely right. If gender is fluid, as the Democratic Party claims, then Zuby is a weightlifting champion. Don't be a bigot, shut up and believe it, or we'll hurt you, or laugh at it, which is exactly the right response. Don't get mad, laugh in their faces.
A Real Clear Markets article said Bank of America needs to come clean about debanking practices. It wrote, and I'm quoting, "More victims of Bank of America's debanking regime have come forward, including Timothy II Project International and constitutional scholar John Eastman, a friend of mine, both debanked under similar circumstances by the nation's second largest bank. The bank's lack of transparency about cancellations that suspiciously look like they are based on viewpoint is why shareholders sought a report assessing whether the bank's policies and practices pose a risk of politicized debanking. Old Glory Bank will never debank any law-abiding customer. Our mission is the Constitution. Open an account at oldglorybank.com, and when you get your debit card in the mail, activate it, and you'll get a copy of my latest book, As Goes California, at a 50% discount. oldglorybank.com. That's oldglorybank.com. Finally, this was on Twitter. I was at the mall yesterday. I walked into a bookstore and asked the clerk if he had Donald Trump's new book on how to deport illegal immigrants. The clerk said, "Get the F out of here and never come back." I said, "That's the book. Do you have it in paperback?" Speaking of climate change being an existential threat.
The evidence is clear. Climate change poses an existential threat to our lives. We got to listen to the scientists and the economists and the national security experts. They all tell us this is code red. The nation and the world are in peril. My Build Back Better plan with key investments in to fight climate change, cutting emissions, and make things more resilient. Each dollar we invest.
Do you ever think about the arithmetic? Planet has been here 4.5 billion years. We've been here, what, 100,000? Maybe 200,000? And we've only been engaged in heavy industry for a little over 200 years. 200 years versus 4.5 billion. And we have the conceit to think that somehow we're a threat? That somehow we're going to put in jeopardy this beautiful little blue-green ball that's just a-floating around the sun? The planet has been through a lot worse than us. Been through all kinds of things worse than us. Been through earthquakes, volcanoes, plate tectonics, continental drift, solar flares, sunspots, magnetic storms, the magnetic reversal of the poles, hundreds of thousands of years of bombardment by comets and asteroids and meteors, worldwide floods, tidal waves, worldwide fires, erosion, cosmic rays, recurring ice ages, and we think some plastic bags and some aluminum cans are going to make a difference?
And then there's karaoke while you're pumping gas.
I'll tell you what, we'll pay for your gasoline.
Okay.
How about a little karaoke from you?
Okay, what you want?
Last thing, this never gets old. Hope you enjoy We've Got a Country to Save. Brought to you by my friends at InvestYRefy.com. Invest in America like I do. And by Freedom Chat. Freedom Chat has true end-to-end encryption, no storage of messages on the server, and no commercial use of user data. Speak freely and message privately. Download the app today and subscribe to my Freedom Chat channel at Larry Elder for exclusive posts and never-before-seen content. We also thank Epoch Times, Old Glory Bank, Patriot Mobile, and Birch Gold. Make sure to follow or subscribe to my channel on whatever platform you are currently using, whether it's X, YouTube, Facebook, or Rumble. And be sure to patronize our sponsors. And remember, we've got a country to save.